morning, students. I welcome you all for another lecture on the course Computer Architecture and Organization. From today onwards, I am going to discuss about another important topic, that is input-output organization. In this, today I would like to explain about the interaction part. What are external devices are, all these things. What are the types of external devices? How our processor addressing the input and output devices? All these things I am going to discuss in this class. Right. So the basic operation performed by input and output devices are external data movement. Just you remember, friends, about the functional units concept. There I am talking about input and output devices. The job of input and output devices was external data movement. That means the data was transferring between the computer system and user, or we can say in another way, the external data movement means the data was transferring between the computer system and external world. This is the meaning of external data movement. So here, if I want to transfer a data to the computer system, because I am a user, if I want to communicating with a computer system, I took the help of input devices. With the help of that, I transfer something to the computer system. And similarly, if I want to take something from a computer system, again I took the help of another type of I/O devices, which is an output device. With the help of output device, I took the data from the computer system. So, with the help of input and output devices, the user can communicate with the computer system. This particular operation, what we can call is external data movement. And coming to the second point, the input to the computer may come from input devices like a keyboard, digital camera, microphone, etc. Let's just know what I am saying. That means a user or an external one, if you want to transfer something to the computer, we took the help of input devices. Some of the input devices are regularly used in our daily life. That is a keyboard, mouse, camera, and then microphone. So with the help of these input devices, I transfer something to the computer system. In a similar way, if I want to take something from a computer system, I took the help of an output devices like monitor, printer, speaker, etc. So, from these 2 points, what we can understand is the user can communicating with the computer system with the help of both the input and output devices. So, final conclusion is these input and output devices are used to perform a specific task in my computer, that was external data movement. Right. There are two types of I/O addressing schemes. That means how our CPU address input and output devices. Because if you take your computer system, you have so many input and output devices. How your CPU can communicating with one specific I/O device? That instant it took the help of the address of that corresponding I/O device. So here, how we are assigning the addresses to the I/O devices. So for that case, there are two techniques or two types of I/O addressing mechanisms we have to address I/O devices. One is memory mapped I/O, and second one is I/O mapped I/O. The second one, I/O mapped I/O, is also called as isolated I/O. Here you remember, friends, map. Simply here I written as mapping, means assigning of addresses. Assigning of addresses. Assigning of addresses is called a mapping. So the first I/O addressing mechanism was memory mapped I/O, and the second I/O addressing mechanism was I/O mapped I/O. It is also called as isolated I/O. So in every system, our CPU may use either memory mapped I/O mechanism or I/O mapped I/O mechanism or isolated I/O mechanism to address I/O devices. You can go and find what is the difference between this memory mapped IO and then IO mapped IO. The first one is memory mapped IO. In a memory mapped IO, in this addressing mechanism, each and every IO device treats like a memory location by our CPU. The first thing you have to remember like this, in this IO addressing mechanism, each and every IO device treats like a memory location by your CPU. Because of that, whatever the address space that was available with the CPU, that address space is shared to both the IO devices as well as to the memory. Let you can assume in the CPU hands there are 200 addresses. Out of these are 200 addresses. For example, 150 addresses I was dedicated to the memory locations. Another 50 addresses I was dedicated to IO devices. Or some other example is out of these 200 addresses, 100 addresses I dedicated to memory and another 100 addresses I dedicated to IO devices. Or one more option is out of 200 addresses, 150 addresses are assigned to IO devices and 50 addresses are assigned to memory. There are different possibilities. So, here one important thing is in memory mapped IO, from CPU point of view, there is no difference between a memory location and IO device. That means our CPU treats each and every IO device like a memory location. Once it is happened, then here IO devices and memories shares the address space what was available in the system. That is the first thing. And the second thing is, once your CPU treats each and every IO device like a memory location, no doubt what are the instructions our CPU use to communicating with the memory, the same instructions it will use to communicating with IO devices. At the same time, our processor uses the same type of control signals which it used to communicating with the memory, the same type of control signals it used to communicating with IO devices. Because from CPU point of view, there is no difference between a memory and an IO device. What is an advantage we are getting from second and third point is, once your processor or a CPU use same type of instructions to communicating with IO devices what it already uses for the memory, in the CPU instruction set, you need not be maintain a dedicated instructions to communicating with the IO devices. Due to that, the number of instructions present in the instruction set may not be increases. And the second thing is, whenever your CPU use the same control signals to communicating with IO devices, what it used for a memory, and the designing of your system is easy because you need not be maintain some other set of control signals to communicating with IO devices. So that is our advantage we are getting from this. And another important point regarding to memory mapped IO was, there is no scope or no chance for address repetition. That means we are unable to use same address in both the memory as well as IO devices. That means one address you have to use only either in a memory or it is in IO devices. That is the meaning of no chance for address repetition. And next important thing is, more number of address lines or more number of address bits are used to address IO devices, because what way we address memory location in a similar way our CPU address IO devices. For example, in order to address a memory, it will use a 10-bit address, and the same 10-bit address it will use for IO devices. So that already we know, because the available address space can be shared by both the memory as well as IO devices. So that is another important thing. And next, what are the small examples, or what are the examples for a memory mapped IO to address IO devices? Here I use two instructions. One is a move data in comma R0, and second one is move R1 comma data out. Here generally this move instruction is used for memory locations communication. Here the same move instruction I was used to communicating with the IO devices, because we know that if I was accessing something from an input device, the data of that input device was stored in internal register of input device, which we can call as data in register. And if I want to transfer something to an output device, Whatever the data CPUs are transferred to the output device receives the data and stored into another register which is called a data out register. Wherever you identify these are two types of registers in the operand fields of an instruction, you immediately remember those instructions are used to communicate with the IO devices. But here I have used memory related instructions to communicate with IO devices, because in a memory mapped IO, each and every IO device treats like a memory location. I hope you understand what a memory mapped IO was. Now I was shifted to the second one, IO mapped IO. This is we can also call as isolated IO. That means the address space can't shared by memory locations as well as IO devices. That means your memory address space is different from IO device address space. Because in case of IO mapped IO or an isolated IO, your CPU treats memory location is different and IO device is different. Both are not same. That's why IO address space is different from memory address space. But in case of previous one, that is in memory mapped IO, memory address space and IO address space both are shared from a common address space. But here both are different. Once it is a different, then the instruction what our CPU can use to communicate with IO device, those are completely different from the instructions what our CPU use for memory communication. In, for example, Intel processors to communicating with IO devices, where IO mapped IO was used to address IO devices, especially they use in and out instructions. In and out instructions. This is in and out instructions. So here for memory communication, the processor uses different instructions. Similarly, the processor uses different control signals to communicate with the memory, compared to the control signals what it is used with IO devices. That means for communication with an IO, the CPU uses different control signals. To communicating with the memory, it will use some other set of control signals. And next one, there is a chance for address repetition, because the same address you may found in memory as well as an IO. But we can distinguish the address belongs to the memory or an IO based on the instruction what we are used and what are the control signals you use in that instruction execution. So there is no problem for us to use the same address for both the memory location as well as IO device. And another one is less number of address lines are used to address IO devices. Because you may go and use less number of IO devices, then you can go and use less number of address lines to address IO devices. But in case of previous one, what are the address lines you use to communicating with the memory? The same address lines you use for IO device. But here the case is different. So that's why in this case, less number of address lines are used to address IO devices. And coming to the last, the example instruction for IO communication is in and out. So whenever you found this in, that is used to read the data from an input device. And wherever you identify out, that instruction is used to transfer the data to an output devices. This is a category of IO devices. So first of all, the IO devices we can also call as external devices, or we can also call as peripherals. So IO devices we can call as external devices. This is one name, or simply you can call ED, means external device. And second one is peripherals. These are the two alternate names we regularly use to representation of IO devices. And then what are the different types of IO devices we have? We know that our input and output devices we have input devices, output devices, input and output devices. That is one type of classification. But another classification of IO devices, these here I can call as the category of IO devices. There are three categories. The first category of IO devices, what we can call is human readable IO devices. Human readable IO devices. What these IO devices are? These are suitable for communicating with the computer user. That means the devices which are helpful to user communicating with the system. That means the user use keyboard or a mouse or a printer or a monitor to communicating with the computer system. All these devices, what we can call is human readable. That means the devices which are straight away communicating with the user. So human readable devices suitable for communicating with the computer user. The example for this is a keyboard, monitor, mouse, printer. All these things what we can call is human readable devices. It means the human interaction with the computer system is due with the help of these I/O devices. That is the first category of I/O devices. And coming to the second category of I/O devices, what we can call is machine readable I/O devices. This is the second category. These are suitable for communicating with equipment. That means some of I/O devices, the user was unable to use those I/O devices, and our system is communicating with some of the I/O devices straight away. In that case, the user involvement is not exist. Such I/O devices, what we can call is machine readable devices. The best example for machine readable devices are disk drives. We know that the secondary storage devices, that is nothing but your floppy disk, CDs, DVDs, all these things we can consider the memory elements, as well as we can consider those are also an I/O devices. If I want to access the information from them, I took the help of disk drives. In that case, our machine is communicating with these devices straight away. This is the second variety of devices which we can call as machine readable devices. And coming to the third category, we can call as communication devices. These devices are suitable for communicating with the remote devices or remote equipment. That means one computer is exchanging its information with some other computer system which are there in far distance. So that is the best example here I was mentioned, that is a computer to exchange data with a remote device. So these what we can call is communicating devices. Again I summarize guys, there are three types of I/O devices. One is a human readable, the devices which are directly interacting with the user, and second one is machine readable, the devices which are used by the only machine itself, and third one is communicating devices. These devices are suitable to communicating with the devices which are at a far end. Like this, there are three varieties of I/O devices. Next we can go and see the structure of I/O device, or a structure of external device, or a structure of a peripheral. Let you can assume this whole thing is your I/O device. This is an I/O device. This is the whole thing is an I/O device. Your I/O device consists of three important blocks. The first one is this control logic. This is a control logic. And second one is this is a buffer. And this third one is transducer. There are three blocks. The first one is control logic. The first one is a control logic. And second one is a buffer. The second one is a buffer. And third one is transducer. These are the major blocks are present in every external device or an I/O device. Now we can go and see what is the job of these internal blocks of an external device. The first one is the control logic. This is the block who collects control signals from I/O module or an I/O interface. I repeat my statement. This is the control logic which receives the control signals from I/O module or an I/O interface. That means, see here friends, this is let you can assume some I/O module. This I/O module connected to number of peripherals like this. Number of peripherals like this. These here we can call as external device 1, external device 2, and so on. External device N. So this is your I/O module, and this end you have a system bus. You know that the system bus was connected to your CPU memory along with I/O modules, not with the I/O devices. Between your I/O device and the system bus, you must have an interface. It is called I/O module. So now, whenever an I/O device want to communicating with a memory or an I/O, it will send it request to the I/O module. In a similar way, if the processor or a memory sends something to any external device, it will inform that information to I/O module. So here this control logic receives the control signals from I/O module end. So from this it receives the commands, and according to the commands it has sent back a status information back to I/O module. That task also done by your control logic. Your control logic not only receives the control signals from I/O module end, it also transfers the status signals back to I/O module. Based on the control signal what it receives, according to that it directs this buffer as well as transducer. So here the job of this buffer is, the buffer receives or transfers. It receives the data from I/O module end, as well as it transfers the data to I/O module. So whatever the data we are going to transfer to I/O module, or whatever the data it was received from I/O module, that was stored internal to the buffer. And later we have one more block as exists, which is called a transducer. The job of transducer is it converts information from one form to another form. That is the general job of a transducer. Here what a transducer can do is, it converts the binary information. It converts the binary information which already present in the buffer into the required form what we are getting from the external device. Because if you observe different input and output devices, their information was not same. That means whatever the information they are producing or whatever the information they are accepting, the form of data is different. So here the job of this transducer is, it converts the binary information into some other form. So once you are receiving the information from this end, in a similar way, in other end, this transducer converts the input information which is in any form to the binary form. Later the data was stored into the buffer and later it was transferred to this. Always the user get the information from the input and output devices from this transducer itself. So this is a simple block diagram of an external device. I hope you understand the different I/O devices, that means different category of I/O devices, and a simple internal block diagram of I/O device. Thank you for patiently listening.